This is the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast. Agoro Carbon Alliance is taking action on a global scale to reverse the effects of climate change by decarbonizing farming and restoring carbon to the world's soil. On this podcast, we're going to explore carbon farming from the soil to the atmosphere and how it affects everyone in between. To learn more, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com. Welcome to the Ag Carbon Farming Podcast. Today we're going to break down how carbon farming really works, from understanding carbon farming, setting a baseline, to implementing new practices, and finally, earning carbon credits. We'll discuss how farmers can choose their own path, adopting sustainability practices, and see real benefits. Joining us today are Clay Craighton and Tanner Prible to walk us through the journey of how carbon farming boosts both environment and the bottom line while connecting producers to the growing voluntary carbon market. Tanner lives in Northeast Indiana on a third-generation row crop and livestock farm. He's been working in the ag industry since 2013. He covers a diverse territory, including the I states, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and New York. His tires need to be changed often. Clay covers the greater Corn Belt with over 12 years of experience in agronomy sales, sustainability, and manure management. He has a bachelor's degree in agronomy from Iowa State University and has a lifelong connection to North Central Iowa's hog industry. Guys, thanks for joining us. We're going to start this out real basic for those who are new and this is their first exposure to carbon farming. Clay, what is carbon farming and carbon sequestration on a farm?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Scott. And carbon farming, carbon sequestration on a farm all pertains to implementing a practice chosen by the producer that they think they can do on their farm to qualify for a program. Then the idea behind it is a program like ours would measure how much carbon is sequestered by implementing this practice like that too. So there will be a subset of lists that a sales rep like one of us will work with you to figure out, okay, what can personally fit your operation, and let's try it out and see if the shoe fits, so to speak.
Tanner, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think just from a real simplistic point of view, Clay explained it really well. It's just implementing some sort of change most of the time that a farmer is thinking about doing already. And we're just here to help measure the carbon that you sequester and open up a little bit of revenue for you for implementing those practices.
Name some of those things that a farmer can do. I mean, when I hear carbon farming, I'm thinking, I could be thinking, I got to go out there and do all of these changes to my operational practice that are going to hinder what I'm doing now or be an additional burden on me. Clay, what are some of the practice changes that you're talking about?
Yeah, and we never want it to be a burden, so we always talk and make it comfortable for the producer too. Okay, what do you think you can fit best on your operation? And not only will you get the benefit of doing the practice and the carbon credit, but the idea behind these practices is you'll also increase soil health, possibly reduce other revenue costs, time, input costs, things of that nature too. So high level, a few of the practices would be minimum tillage or reduced tillage. Now, a producer could qualify for that by either just reducing the pass or reducing depth disturbance. There's different levels of severity to that, right? If you're going from a 4-pass system to a 3-pass system, or if a guy's been deep ripping and wants to go to strip till, there's different levels there too. Even spoken to folks before that they've qualified by taking out an anhydrous pass and disbanding their nitrogen. So that one's got a lot of wiggle room for how we can get folks involved. That's typically where I start most conversations with, hey, what's your crop rotation? What's your tillage method? And then relating to that also would be transitioning to no-till, as well to like true blue no-till. And regarding that anhydrous pass, there's one producer I worked with where he took that out to ban his nitrogen. Then he went to no-till because he was doing no extra pass at that point too. So it's catching that in the right frame of mind and the right timing for the producer. And with that too, like the benefits I described before, like, reducing time in the field, more time at home with family, less time in the tractor, less input costs, fuel costs, things of that nature. So there's added benefits, not just the carbon sequestration alone. Then relating to that would be cover crop implementation. So you could be a first-time cover crop producer, and we don't expect you to do all acres. Once again, comfort level for what you want to do, and then where does it fall in your rotation? Is it a corn bean rotation? Are you doing it following one particular crop or both crops? So if you're brand new to covers, you can start that way. Also, for some of our legacy producers, we call it, guys that have been doing covers for a long time. Let's say you've been doing cereal rye, and then you wanted to add a hairy vetch or a red clover, something like that, to diversify, to add a legume species. That can also qualify you for our program too. So a lot of the conversations that Tanner and I have with folks is just figuring out, what have you been doing? What have you been thinking about? What interested you in the carbon markets in general? And where could we potentially be a good fit?
Tanner, I'm curious. Third generation a farmer, you're out there doing what your father and your grandfather did. How do they respond to this carbon farming thing? Do they feel it's a burden? Do they feel that there's actually an upside to this for their farm?
Sure. Yeah, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from them, and sometimes when we work with the older generation that's handing some of the operation down to folks like me, we do run into a little bit of hesitancy. But the best way for Clay and I to talk folks around that scenario and make them feel a little more comfortable with it is there's a lot of this is something that they've been thinking about implementing into their operation already, and we're just here as specialists in the carbon industry to one, kind of coach them through this scenario between Clay and our grower success team, and then two, reduce the financial burden that they would have if they were trying to do this on their own. And so I think there is a little bit of initial hesitancy, but as long as they're willing to have a conversation with us, we can really make them super comfortable with the practices that we're asking them to implement.
And you mentioned, Tanner, that your grandfather and father were already thinking or possibly thinking of doing some of these practice changes. Was it to sequester carbon, or was it for an agronomic or economical benefit?
Yeah, I think that's the fantastic part about this Agoro program, Agoro carbon program that we have, is that everything that we're doing, obviously from Clay and I's perspective, we talk about the money we're able to open up, the revenue we're able to open up for operations at a time where commodity prices are really struggling. But on top of that, everything that we're asking you to do is going to increase organic matter. It's going to increase your CEC. It's going to increase your soil structure and your water filtration and your ability to use the nutrients that are already within your soils. And so there's loads of agronomic things that are really going to benefit, on top of the fact that we're also willing to partner with you over the length of 10 years and work with you through that whole process in opening up that revenue and making that carbon that you're sequestering marketable.
And Clay, can you help me understand, or how does doing no-till and cover cropping sequester more carbon in the soil? How does that whole process work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is, by implementing the practice, you will sequester a set amount of carbon per acre per year by doing this practice. The idea, like, for example, for cover crop, you're adding additional root mass in there, additional biomass, keeping that soil profile active, inherently more organic matter, more carbon from that too. And by implementing no-till with that too, or minimum till disturbance, you're keeping more of that residue on tap, keeping that blanket effect there, keeping the carbon in the soil, or taking it back out of the atmosphere into the soil at that point too. So having a measurable effect after that. So by compounding those two together too, you'll likely increase your chances of sequestering carbon, so likely get a higher payment at that point too. So you only need one practice to get qualified, but the idea is, if we can find any acres where we can do dual practice on, that can increase your chances and your potential for a higher revenue.
And how do you measure that, Tanner? I mean, if a before and after, are you using computer models? Are you actually going out there? Is there a tool that can measure the carbon in the soil in the field?
Yeah, so we've got lots of folks here at Agoro that maybe handle this question a little bit better than me. They're professionals and they handle this every day. But from a real simplistic high level view, we're taking a baseline soil sample as we sign you up for this contract, and at year 5 we'll come back and we'll soil sample again, and we'll see what the difference in carbon is within our soil, and then we're going to do the exact same thing at year 10. So I think that's what makes folks really comfortable with our program, is that we are measuring legitimate sequestered carbon every 5 years, and they can see the value in that soil sample.
Okay, now let's get into the details of the process that you guys go through on a daily basis with farmers. Let's say, Clay, that I'm a farmer. I read about carbon sequestration or something about the carbon marketplace, and I got your name and number, and I call you on the phone. What's the process that you go through to qualify and to get me started on a program, or not, if I don't qualify, or if it's not a right fit?
Yeah, absolutely. Get a hold of one way or another, schedule a meeting. Then basically it's a discovery call, I call it. I'll ask them, okay, first off, how'd you hear of us? It's always nice to track that, where you found out about Agoro Carbon first. And then after that, okay, what are you doing on your operation currently? What sparked your interest to discover different revenue streams and look down this regen ag path? Did you read something, or what brought you to this point, right? Then I figure out what have you been doing on your operation so far? Where could you possibly look to see an improvement, or do a practice change to implement that qualification call at that point? So it's really diagnosing basically what the producer has been doing and what they're potentially willing to do. And then we put together several different scenarios. Sometimes we have a great estimation tool that we have on hand that we can really hone in and give a quote on what growers could potentially expect from doing the no-till and covers, like you had mentioned before. And we can do as many scenarios as you like. I do like a what if scenario if we do no-till and covers with a legume, if we do no-till and covers with a non-legume, if we do min-till and covers, so we can or min-till alone, like that too. And then with that too, without diving too deep into the bushes, we have 2 different payment options also. So we can label them however guys want to see, show the different payment options, the different practice choices, and give them the options. And then I'll always set up a qualification call after, like, okay, you review, and I'll follow up at the end of the week, so we can really talk about these numbers, where they came from, what can we expect by doing these practices.
So I don't have to jump in with both feet. You put a program together, and it may say, here are the 5 things that I need to do to generate the revenue per the model. And maybe I'm not ready for all 5 of those. I can pick, maybe these 2 that I want to implement this year. And you can generate, again, another model that shows what that's worth from an income revenue standpoint.
Yes, absolutely. And we can do, like, say a producer has 1,000 acres that they want to start with 500. We can start at 500, you know what I mean? And dip their toe, so to speak. I always tell growers, like, yeah, we don't have to throw you in a lake and say swim. Like, let's see what works best on both parties. And now that I've been here 3.5 years, I've had some folks that first year when I was here that I signed up that did that. They dipped their toe. They did some reduced till and some covers where they felt comfortable. And now that the crop rotations come back around, we've signed additional acres with some folks this year. So that's been really neat to see. And I really try and tell producers that, hey, we're trying to work with you, not force you to work with us, type thing. Like, it's square peg round hole type deal. Like, it's a partnership. Let's find the right path together.
Tanner, how big of a farmer do I need to be, or what is my commitment? Let's say I have 1,000 acres. Can I start out with a small, 15 acre field, or is there a minimum that I need to get into to really see a benefit?
Yeah, so here at Agoro, we actually have one of the smaller minimum acre requirements in the industry. So I'm thankful that we're willing to work with maybe farmers not at a certain scale, and we've got a 500 acre minimum, but we're also mostly concerned with the amount of carbon that we're able to sequester. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room within that 500 acres. If it's 400 acres that's going to sequester loads and loads of carbon, then we don't want folks to self-disqualify themselves. It's always best to talk to Clay or I and just get an understanding of exactly what they think their operation is now and what they want it to be and the type of carbon that they're going to bring to the table. And then we're just willing to work with everybody and dial everything down to know exactly whether it's going to be a good fit with us. To piggyback off of what Clay said, we're going to be in these partnerships with folks for 10 years. And so it does us no benefit to have folks working with us that aren't sure they want to be within the program. So we just want to dissect everybody's operation and make sure that it's a great fit for both of us. And we're going to be strong partners for the foreseeable future.
I think that's a great point to make, that this is a long-term relationship. When I sign a contract with Agoro, though, how long is the contract? I mean, let's say that I'm, I don't know whether I want to sign on for 10 or 20 years. What's the minimum contract, Tanner?
Yeah, so our minimum contract is 10 years, and a lot of the reason for that is we are marketing verifiable carbon, and it takes a long process to verify significant amounts of carbon, and it takes a while to really push those carbon numbers to an economic form from farmers. And so we want to work with farmers and produce quality carbon credits. And we've found that 5 and 10 year measuring spots are the most effective and most economic for us here at Agoro. And really, in the grand scheme of things, it's actually more of a short-term contract as an industry standard as far as carbon goes. So we've kind of found a sweet spot, and that's at 10 years.
Okay, so I could be a little apprehensive. 10 years seems like a long time, especially if I have to do a lot more work. I have to do data collection and that sort of stuff. What is required of me besides the practice changes, which agronomically makes sense? If you're just doing it just from the agronomic standpoint, some of these things are very healthy for the soil, very healthy for my farm. What am I committing to? What kind of data do I need to collect? How much time do I need to budget to fulfill my side of the program, Clay?
Yeah, as far as the data collection piece goes, also, we also have a grower success team that we work with, Tanner and I, hand in hand. So it's a team of agronomists that specialize in data collection, in onboarding, to take more of that burden off the producer. They're there to help because, at the end of the day, at the end of a growing season, nobody wants to sit there and do data till the cows come home.
Right. That's why I got into farming, Clay. I don't want to sit in a computer. I want to be out in the field.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's nice to have a team that specializes directly in that, right? To be able to help producers. So we have a onboarding specialized team that would help collect field boundaries or map field boundaries if you don't have any, and help with the initial historical data collection piece, which is stuff you guys keep track of anyways. On the farming side, it's very straightforward. It's planting dates, crop rotations, what fertilizer did you apply, when, if you did a cover, when, what species, things of that nature. It's stuff you're already keeping track of. It's just putting it to paper, so to speak, to prove the practice. So the idea behind the data collection is that's just proving the practice. Between that and the soil sample, that's helping make this verified credit that Tanner said before, which makes these verified credits are much more attractive to buyers. So that's basically doing the homework to make it a more attractive credit applicable to buyers. And then after that too, we have a support agronomy staff who would do yearly visits with the producers and help give recommendations, see how things were going, help with that yearly data collection. And one thing we always ask when it comes to contract time is if you have a preferred quarter for what time of the year you'd like to meet to talk about the data collection. Okay, what happened in your field? So most of the time for farmers, it's Q4. It's end of the year after harvest, like we're planning for next year. This is what we did. This is what happened in my field. This is what we're going to try next year, type deal. So the idea, once again, the whole partnership aspect, you'll have a team and you'll know your team right away. So whether it's Clay and Tanner and member X of the Grower Success team, but we really like the aspect of the human element where you're not talking to necessarily like a customer service hotline. You're talking to people who are there to help you.
Yeah, so you're not going to sign this contract and have all this hand-holding to get it started, and then all of a sudden, poof!
Yep.
Now you're dealing with a phone tree that you got to call, a 1-800 number, and try to get the information. I really like that. Okay, I'm gonna split this question up into two parts. Clay gets one part, Tanner gets the other part. Clay, you're gonna take the role of somebody that maybe is not quite sure, or maybe a little nervous for you to come and do a baseline check because maybe I'm not the best farmer out there. That maybe my practices aren't that great. And I don't think there's that many growers out there, but we're going to take that. And then Tanner, you're going to take the other side. You're going to take the side of somebody that's a very progressive farmer that's already maybe done a lot of no-till and cover crops. And what does that baseline look like? And what does that grower, that farmer how can they participate in the program? So Clay, do you understand the question? Maybe I haven't done any no-till or low-till. I have done no cover crops, and I'm actually a little apprehensive because I may be embarrassed by what that baseline shows.
Yeah, so with that, I would really try and figure out the dip the toe speak, like I mentioned before. Like, okay, what are you comfortable with trying out first? First, I would always mention the reduced tillage. Like, is there anywhere where we could reduce depth disturbance or reduce the pass? Ultimately, that'll put more money in your pocket, inherently money and time from reducing fuel costs and time across the field. Is there anywhere there where we could try it first? Or let's say I'm talking to a producer in Nebraska that has irrigation too. Is there anywhere there where you'd like to try some covers just to test the waters? I know people have heard horror stories about covers, but it is a trial and error type process to find the right mix and match for you. And that's another reason too why we have agronomists here to help with species recommendations and stuff too. So we have the resources there available to help you figure out what your comfort level is. Like, are you trying to produce covers, primarily to increase your soil health and just to keep that profile active? Are you trying to make it another food source for like your cattle or something like that too? There's different spectrums for what we can do there to offer you. So I would really urge first, let's try and find something to reduce till. Is there something there first? Is there any covers we can add? If not, no big deal. You only need one practice to qualify, and let's just start. Let's see how things go. And because the soil sampling, we take care of the costs. Too. And the worst thing that can happen is we'll take the soil sample at year 1 and year 5. And the worst thing that happens is there's not much change. Hey, you're still going to get a payment, even if it's not as much. And I'm never upset when I see a deposit in my bank account. So I always like that aspect of it. But for me, you never know until you try. And if things are going this direction anyways, it's a dual benefit, more time with the family, more revenue potentially back in your pocket, and let's see if this could actually work.
So there's no reason to be apprehensive. You take all the risk and all of the embarrassment, if there could be any, out of the equation. Tanner, what about you? Let's say it's a real progressive farmer. They've been doing no-till for 10 or dozen years, right? And they've been doing some cover cropping. Is there something in this program for me?
Yeah, so that's honestly one of my favorite scenarios. As a farmer myself, it's nice to work with agrocarbon. This legume additionality that we have as a practice it really is fantastic, in the form of this new carbon industry that everyone is using as kind of a hot topic right now. You always get that generational farmer that's been no-tilling and been cover cropping and is like, man, it's really frustrating that you guys are willing to pay folks that are willing to do it now, but you're saying this is good for our soil and that it's best practices. I've been doing it for years and there's nothing there for me. That legume additionality piece is a fantastic tool that if we can just change up their cover cropping a little bit, we can add a species, we can add a legume like a clover or a vetch, something that can even be really economical. We get those big root masses, legumes that fixate nitrogen, and we're able to really sequester some carbon from folks that think there's no way for them to do so. There is. So we've got an avenue for the farmer that's been doing things the right way for a long time. We're here to help them open up some revenue, just like we are the guy that's just dipping his toe in for the first time with cover crops.
Great. So here's the other question that I assume you guys get a lot. I know I do. Farmers, let's say I'm a corn farmer. I take a bushel of corn and I go to market and I tangibly take this bushel of corn, I set it on the scale, and I get paid for that. There's a physical transaction. Corn for money. Carbon is not a tangible product that you're actually pulling and putting in a bag and taking it to the market. How does that whole thing work? How does this carbon sequestration become something worth money? How does Agoro take those credits and make money from them? Is that a fair question, Clay?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question and a fairly common one too. Like, how does this a tangible asset, right? Like, you can't really see it that well with your hand. You're not physically taking it there, but we take care of a lot of that action for the grower by doing the soil sampling, by helping with the data collection. So we're trying to create that package for the producer specifically to be able to sell. So each carbon credit will have its own like serial number exactly too. It's not going to say Farmer John
interesting
for a carbon credit here either, which is an important factor sometimes too, because some folks have the question like, okay, how much are they going to know about my exact operation? Like, what rights they're going to have to my land, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, we take care of the packaging for you. We have a tangible serial number for you to track that throughout. And we do the selling for you with some verified buyers that we work with. And the registry we utilize is Vera, which is a global registry. The idea behind that is to be able to get more buyers, right? More global buyers like that too. So finding the right buyer for the credit. But to go back to the question, to make it a tangible asset, you asked before about these practices and sequestration, and let's just say by doing no-till and covers, we're going to be sequestering close to a ton a year. So by the time we get to year 5, it'd be 4 or 5 tons in that scenario. That too, we take that tonnage amount times our tonnage price, and we do have different tonnage prices. I don't want to sound wishy-washy, but depends on what payment option you do, option A or B. But you take that 4 or 5 tonnage amount times the tonnage price. That's how many dollars you get per acre. So it will be a tangible asset. You will be able to count, like you said before, like bushel for money. Mm-hmm. It is technically carbon for money, but we're taking care of that selling, the verification, all that part for the producer at that point.
Tanner, who's buying this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's carbon footprint is an awfully popular term that's being tossed around. Turn on your TV and it seems like you can flip through each channel and hear about a company making some sort of carbon neutrality promise. And so there's some fish out there right now in the industry and in the world, so to speak, that are trying to get to that carbon neutral point. And there's been a lot of promises made. By 2025, by 2030, we'll be carbon neutral. So the demand is only going up, and with the green energy push that we've seen, not just in the U.S. but around the world, large companies with large footprints, with large carbon footprints that need to become carbon neutral. There's going to be lots of buyers, and it's going to be large companies, Amazons, Microsofts, Deltas, that people and hear of and see all the time that are making those promises that are going to be buyers of carbon, whether it's from us or from someone else.
Yeah, so basically you take an Amazon. They have all these trucks running around all over the place that are just polluting the atmosphere, and they may say by this year they're going to be carbon neutral. Well, how are they going to do that? They're not going to do it on their own, because they're still going to have to drive trucks from point A to point B. That's what they do. They're a logistics company. But the way that they see to get to a carbon neutral is to offset those emissions that they produce by going to a farmer who can sequester and obtain that credit. So that's the way that the market is established. There's all these companies. I think Google, if you log on to google.com, right down on the bottom, there's not a whole lot of information on that homepage, but on the bottom, there's a carbon statement that you can click on, and you can learn about how Google is becoming a carbon neutral. Now, their campus, in Palo Alto or wherever they are, is very energy efficient, but they're not zero. In order for them to get to zero, they need to buy these credits to offset that. So there's kind of a balance there. And almost all companies, if you look at any of the big ones anyway, they have some kind of a carbon statement or aspiration that they're going for. So it's a very big market. It's a growing market. And I think that farmers are probably one of the biggest producers of carbon credits. So it's a great opportunity to improve your farm. Any parting words, Clay, when you go and you're at there's a lot of conventions and trade shows going on now. What is one of the biggest questions you get, and how do you answer it? And I'm going to ask Tanner the same question.
One of the biggest ones we just talked about was actually who's buying this stuff. What's going on. So somebody is just going to continue to do bad for me to do the good type deal, and it's like not necessarily that way. So I always explain to producers I use airlines a lot for an example, right? Like planes don't fly on hopes and dreams, even though we wish they might sometimes. So it's like, okay, they have to purchase a carbon offset to reduce their emissions like that too. And what you alluded to before also, I've noticed just with recent flights to see producers also, is there's more of a push recently. Like, hey, your plane ticket might say this is how many tons of carbon you're producing or emitting. Try and go more neutral. Can you do this factor to do this? And it's that way too around Black Friday right now with like these shipments coming in. Like, hey, this box was shipped 25% net neutral. I got that with the HelloFresh stuff delivery the other day. So it's just crazy to see all the influx and push here. But that's a very common question I get. Another one I get is the data privacy thing, like who's seen my data, things of that nature, which we kind of talked about before. And then also, like we kind of talked through this whole discussion, is like what's on me as the producer? Like, what do I have to do that too? So it's just showing them the relationship, again, the partner aspect that we're in this together. And there's situations that evolve where it might be okay to like work certain areas of the ground still yet too. So like that's one big question I get to is like, what if we have an abnormally wet year, or have severe compaction in certain areas and I need to work some parts of the ground. So that too, little fluctuations like that are allowed in the program too. So we always tell guys, have the conversation, don't self-disqualify yourself and make it all black and white. Let's work together to find a common ground here.
Tanner, what about you? What are some of the big questions you get?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of the questions around this are all about the revenue. I mean, money talks, and I understand that. And if I'm able to pop my Agoro hat off here and throw on my farmer hat, if I hauled all of my corn and soybeans this year into the elevator, when they wrote me a check for those corn and soybeans, if they were the exact same amount of soybeans and corn that I took in last year, my check was about 30 or 40% less than it was from the year before because of the way the commodity prices have dwindled here over time. And so one thing we're here to do is try to help open up another stream of revenue for you on your farm. And it's not like we're asking you to dump concrete on the 80 acres behind your farm. I mean, we want to improve your soil structure. We want to improve your CEC. We want to help you from every agronomic aspect that Clay and I can think of. We want to try to make gains, and we want to make you more profitable. And all of it is to the benefit of the ground and to the benefit of the family and to the benefit of the farm. And the fact that you're getting a little bit of revenue from it is just a huge bonus on top of all the other positives that you're going to see from the program. So seeing something that is so beneficial for farming in general also create revenue is just a win-win-win situation for everybody.
I think this has been a great discussion. I think I've learned a little bit more. I think you've eased my apprehensions. The best news is agorocarbonalliance.com, which will be linked in the show notes. If you go there, there's a lot of resources, a lot of information. If you don't want to talk to anybody right away, there's a lot of resources. You can go on there and do some sleuthing yourself. But when you're ready, Agoro has a great team of people like Clay, like Tanner, that can talk to you on the phone or drive out to your farm and talk to you face to face and answer those questions. There's no obligation. They just want you to know what's available and how it may help you. Clay and Tanner, what's the best way for a grower that's in your service area to get a hold of you or get a hold of someone to start the discussion? Are you guys the right ones to get the discussion started?
Yes. Yep. All the first discussions go through us as the sales reps and things of that nature. So if anybody's interested, one thing you can do is agorocarbonalliance.com, and we have a new tool on there also where even under our About Us section, there's a new sales section there too, where you can click your state and it'll show you what rep is representative of your state and have all the contact info right there. You can go direct to us like that, or you can also do a quick quoting tool that we have on our website.
Nice.
Also for, hey, I'm farmer John in Nebraska. I have this many acres. I'm interested in reduced tillage and I'd like to talk to a representative type deal. So there's multiple ways to get involved, whether it be from our website directly, off Facebook, or things of that nature, but we'd love to have the discussion with you.
Excellent. Well, we hope that this discussion eased your mind. We hope that we educated you a little bit more about the carbon marketplace and how you can take advantage of this money that's out there that's going to help not only bring revenue to the farm, but also enhance maybe the crops that you're growing and the soil that you're growing it in. You've been listening to the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast, where we bring you knowledge on how to sustainably and profitably transform farming through carbon cropping. To learn more about how you can become a partner, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com or follow us on our many social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn.